After the second volume of the third-year arc was released, it became clear that the absence of Sakayanagi started to become a problem. She was one of the smartest characters in the series, and her hobby was to see Ayanokoji in trouble, so she was one of the main characters that kept the story interesting. However, even after she left a few things behind that could potentially shake the balance and the story in the future. She said she just want to get revenge on Ayanokoji, but after the reveal of Shiraishi's identity, maybe there is a much deeper reason behind her withdrawal from school. So, let's take a look at it one by one. In her last meeting with Ayanokoji, there was a mysterious exchange that they threw to each other. Sakayanagi said that her role is not over, because she believes there is another reason why Ayanokoji want her to withdraw from school. Hearing that question, Ayanokoji replied by saying he had set a few things in motion, but cannot predict the future with certainty. If we include Sakayanagi's mysterious request to his father, then it's clear that Sakayanagi was planning to do something outside the school, and her mission will more or less affect Ayanokoji's future. This was a really big mystery when it was first released, but since we finally know there is someone like Shiraishi who was sent just to observe Ayanokoji, we could finally take a pretty good guess behind Sakayanagi's voluntary withdrawal. Sakayanagi knew about the White Room, and thanks to her father's connection, she also has a presence in the business and political world. With that much connection, I dare to say that what she is trying to do outside the school is to create a connection among certain people to help Ayanokoji securing his future. This possibility aligns with Ayanokoji's promise to meet Sakayanagi again, and also Sakayanagi's desire to have a rematch with Ayanokoji. If Ayanokoji could break free from his father and attain true freedom, then they will have a lot of time to play chess without any intervention. However, for this future to happen, Ayanokoji will need to outplay his father and take over the control from him. Or, Atsuomi needs to lose the political war, so he will lose all power that binds Ayanokoji. However, before we talk about the future, let's take a step back and try to figure out why Ayanokoji wanted Sakayanagi to withdraw, and how Sakayanagi knew about Ayanokoji's intention. It all started in Volume 8's second-year arc, where Ayanokoji realizes there is something wrong with Tsubasa Nanase. From Ayanokoji's perspective, Tsubasa is an anomaly. She is not a White Room student, but Tsukishiro sent her to ANHS just for the sake of revenge. That reason alone is strange, because Tsukishiro knows full well Tsubasa wouldn't be able to do anything to Ayanokoji, so it's just normal for Ayanokoji to be suspicious that there must be another reason why Tsubasa was sent to approach him. That suspicion finally became clear in Volume 8, where Ayanokoji managed to make Tsubasa slip and pass through her defense. Their conversation made Ayanokoji think of another possibility, which is that there was never a plan to expel him from school. Even though it's just a possibility, everything will make sense if Ayanokoji thinks about it. Tsukishiro doesn't seem to be really trying to expel him back in the uninhabited island exam. And ever since that exam, there has been literally no action that could potentially harm Ayanokoji, so it's just natural to think that his father is not really trying to get him back. If Atsuomi didn't have any intention to expel him, then it will lead to another possibility, which is Atsuomi intentionally let Ayanokoji stay in ANHS for some unknown reason. There are only a few possible scenarios for why his father wanted him to stay in ANHS, but based on what Tsukishiro had done to him, it seems he tried to let everyone know how great Ayanokoji is, because thanks to Tsukishiro, Ayanokoji was forced to reveal part of his ability to the whole school. Starting with targeting him in a class bowl exam, putting a bounty on his head, and creating a very big exam just to expel him, all those exams force Ayanokoji to attract more unnecessary attention to himself. With Tsukishiro's position as the director, he could easily get Ayanokoji's data during the island, and use it to bring a lot of investors to the White Room, so it wouldn't be weird if Atsuomi wanted Ayanokoji in ANHS so a lot of people could see him fresh in the field. The biggest hint was dropped in Volume 6's second-year arc, where Ishigami chose to confront Ayanokoji directly. Although their conversation was brief, it became clear that he is watching Ayanokoji, and maybe even controlling him without him even know about it. Ishigami wants him to expel Yagami, and the timing during the cultural festival is really suspicious because there will be a lot of outsiders in school, so Ayanokoji once again starts to realize that he is being watched. To put it in the grand view, Ayanokoji is a horse, and ANHS is the race field, while the audience is watching him to see how nice he performs, so they could decide how much they should bet on him. It's probably uncomfortable to think about, but Ayanokoji knew what kind of father he has, so that kind of scenario is really possible. However, even if he know, there is nothing he can do about it. Since he already decided to take the third year seriously, he will walk in his father's script whether he likes it or not. However, it will be different if there is someone who can help him from the outside, and that is where Sakayanagi took her role. And now let's move to Sakayanagi, and how she possibly knew what Ayanokoji was thinking by asking her to leave the school. For starters, let's try to see how much relevance Sakayanagi had in the story. She is the daughter of ANHS chairman, and also knew a lot of important people ever since she was a kid, so there is a chance she could find the people who are currently watching Ayanokoji from the outside. As for how she knew what Ayanokoji was planning, this is not hard to explain, because when Ishigami came to Ayanokoji's room back in Volume 6, Sakayanagi was also present in that room, so she must have been reaching the same conclusion as Ayanokoji. However, there is another part from the newest volume that could also become proof of Sakayanagi's knowledge, which is the presence of Shiraishi in her class. In the previous volume's side story, Shiraishi told herself that Sakayanagi could rest assured, and left everything to her, but in the newest volume, Shiraishi told Tsubasa that Sakayanagi was a bother to her. Even though both statements sound contradictory, Shiraishi's connection with Sakayanagi sounds like something that is unusual, because it indicates that Sakayanagi know about Shiraishi's real identity. For a record, Sakayanagi once visited the White Room thanks to his father's connection, so if Shiraishi was also raised in a special facility just like a lot of people believe it to be, then it wouldn't be strange if Sakayanagi met Shiraishi in the past. If Sakayanagi knew about Shiraishi, then she should have a pretty good guess why she ended up in ANHS, especially after she heard about Ishigami's warning to Ayanokoji. Let's just say Sakayanagi already understand why Atsuomi sent Ayanokoji to ANHS, and she understand why Ayanokoji wanted her to withdraw from school. Then the only mysteries left are what exactly she wanted to do outside, and what she left behind inside the school. It's easy to imagine that she starts building connections with a lot of people outside, and waiting for Ayanokoji to become a politician himself so they could work together to fight Atsuomi. However, Sakayanagi's last conversation with Ryuen is the real mystery. She said that she wanted to help Ryuen to win against Ayanokoji. She said she only wanted to get revenge, but if you look at it from the bigger stage, defeating Ayanokoji is probably Sakayanagi's way to help Ayanokoji. If Ayanokoji is viewed as a horse by his father, that horse will lose a lot of its value if it ends up losing against a bunch of regular high schoolers. If Ayanokoji ends up losing, then his rate will fall, and no one is going to put their bet on him. To put it simply, Atsuomi will lose the trust of the investor, and it will be easier to beat him later. However, before that happy ending comes, we need to figure out what exactly Sakayanagi left in school that could help Ryuen to defeat Ayanokoji. The most obvious answer is Shiraishi, but from Shiraishi's conversation with Tsubasa, she made it clear that she is just an observer. Of course, that could be a lie because Shiraishi already has her own agenda, but it's also a bit naive to think that Sakayanagi only trusted one person to do her job. If we look at the people who were close to Sakayanagi, there are at least 3 people that we need to be suspicious of: Morishita, Hashimoto, and Tokido. I know Tokido sounds a bit irrelevant, but his plot with Sakayanagi was one of the most interesting aspects that was left unresolved from the second year arc, and if we look at Tokido's profile from the third year website, we could see Sakayanagi's hand appear on it. Every character from the third year website appears with their colored illustration, and Tokido has a colored illustration from volume 4.5 second year arc, so it's a bit weird they chose that black and white illustration for his profile. Since the third year website is full of foreshadowing, this Tokido illustration probably has some kind of meaning, but it's indeed unthinkable for Tokido to do something unthinkable, so let's just put Tokido on the bottom of the list. As for Hashimoto, it's a bit suspicious that he and Sakayanagi haven't had any last meeting ever since what happened on second year final special exam. Hashimoto had opened himself to Sakayanagi, and Sakayanagi forgave him even though it cost her a promise. On that day, a special connection was born, and it's hard to think that Hashimoto didn't feel anything in that moment. Hashimoto's quote from the third-year website told us that he wanted to lend a hand and help someone so much regardless of personal interest. That line is clearly out of character for Hashimoto, so there must have been some change that made him set aside his priority to graduate from Class A. There are not many hint to be suspicious of him, but with Hashimoto always sticking his nose in Ayanokoji's business, it wouldn't be strange if someday he really tried to screw him over. And the last suspect, and also the most possible candidate to be Ayanokoji's slay, is none other than Morishita. In fact, there are a few strong hints that indicate Sakayanagi told something to Morishita. In the volume 12.5 side story, Morishita intentionally testing Ayanokoji by acting like a weirdo and observing the ants. She said that she wanted to see Ayanokoji's reaction because Sakayanagi had already told her something interesting. We still didn't know what Sakayanagi told her, but they never seemed to have any contact at all, so it's strange that Sakayanagi suddenly built a relationship with Morishita. Morishita was also present when Sakayanagi left the school, and she immediately became the medium that helped Ayanokoji to gather points for his transfer. It just doesn't seem natural for her to suddenly build a very close relationship with Ayanokoji, but still didn't trust him. However, one scene that made me really suspicious of her was the scene where Ayanokoji first entered his new class. At that time, Mashima still didn't decide where Ayanokoji should sit, but Morishita suddenly forced him to sit in front of her. She didn't suggest any other seat near her, but specifically the seat in front of her. It could be just a guise to bully him, but since we know Ayanokoji ended up sitting beside Shiraishi, everything starts to connect. In front of Tsubasa, Shiraishi admits that she cannot hold herself, because by some strange twist of fate, Ayanokoji ended up sitting beside her. However, Morishita was the one who acted to make it happen, and there is always a chance that Sakayanagi is the one who asked her to do that. By letting Ayanokoji sit beside Shiraishi, it will crack Shiraishi's defense as an observer, and eventually lead Ayanokoji to learn about Shiraishi, just like what happened in the newest volume. If Morishita really acted under Sakayanagi's request, this is probably her way to help Ayanokoji realize that he is being observed, and since Morishita is sitting behind them, she has the best access to observe and control their interaction. However, I don't know how she could help Ryuen to beat Ayanokoji. I don't think she will become a traitor, but at least for now she will keep observing Ayanokoji. Another interesting thing about Morishita is her unpredictability. She is smart, but doesn't really act like it, so it's really hard to see what she is actually thinking. She could become a real Joker card in the future, but as for now, it's really too early to take a guess on what Sakayanagi is actually planning for Ayanokoji. One thing for sure is, Sakayanagi really cares about Ayanokoji in her own way. It's a mix of love, revenge, and maybe some rivalry, and that is what made Sakayanagi really special compared to the other girls in the series. This series will never be the same without her, so let's just hope we will see her again sooner than we expected.